that the indictments against the prime minister are something silly. We know that this is something about nice headlines. This is something that never happened in any democracy around the world, and for sure not here in Israel. So this is why the public understand that this is a pursuit. This is a pursuit against the prime minister, a political pursuit, unfortunately also the justice pursuit, and also media pursuit. So I think that the voters know and realize that, and I hope we see it on the election.
The prime minister himself called it an attempted coup d'etat. Do you agree with that?
Excuse me again?
The prime minister said that what's going on with the court cases, is an attempted coup d'etat.
I don't want to use this word. I want to say one thing. The public understand that the indictments against the prime minister are silly. And they know that the prime minister is capable of doing a great work for Israel, also if the trial will start.
All right, Mr. Zamir, do you have a...
He can do both, and you can trust the prime minister that he knows how to do the work for the sake of Israel, and I think the public realize that.
Mr. Asaf Zamir, what do you say?
I'm going to quote a very big Israeli leader that said once that a prime minister going to court does not have a moral mandate to represent.
Thank you for the compliment.
This prime minister saying that was, this leader was Bibi Netanyahu. He said it about Ehud Olmert, who then resigned. And this is what Benjamin Netanyahu should have done once the indictments became real. Bribery and fraud and breach of trust, not just for nice headlines, also for gifts.
This is what they accuse him.
Also for gifts, also for control and power over media, also for the selling of public interests. This is not just nice coverage, and I'm sure that the minute his trial will start, the people of Israel will understand that we cannot afford to have a prime minister that spends his days in court. By the way, this is why if Benjamin Netanyahu wins and becomes bigger than the Blue and White Party, he will go for legislating French law and actually getting the get-out-of-jail-free card.
Mr. Zohar?
We see the public understand very, very good right now that the pursuit against Benjamin Netanyahu is something strange, and they don't want to be a part of it. This is why we are getting stronger. And I hope Blue and White Party don't count on this matter, on the legal issues that will stop us keep leading this country. We believe in the justice system. We hope the truth will come, through. But anyway,
you mentioned you believe in the justice system. Does that mean you will not be pushing for a French law?
The Prime Minister will
about the French law possibility.
The Prime Minister will continue his great job for Israel, and nothing will stop us. The only ones that can stop us, lead this country is the public.
Mr. Zohar, if you believe in the justice system,
the ones that we trust that will give us the support again.
So will there be a French law? Is that a possibility? A French law advanced if Netanyahu's next term?
We don't right now. We don't talking about these issues. It's nothing that is a part of our campaign.
Okay.
This is a part of the Blue and White campaign, and I'm not going to be involved in this kind of issues because it's not a part of our campaign.
Mr. Avidar, this is now the third election. I want to ask just directly. This time, are you going to recommend...
Can I respond first of all before
you can respond, and then please also tell us, is the Yisrael Beitenu going to recommend someone this time around for Prime Minister?
First of all, definitely yes. But the main idea is that we need to understand that the Israeli public need to understand that the coming elections is about the rule of law. And it looks like that the Prime Minister and Mr. Zohar do not understand the meaning of the rule of law. But it's not only about the court cases. It's also about taking... public servants and making them part of their campaign. For example, the National Security Advisor, Meir Ben Shabbat, he actually killed the concept of civil servant. He's right now a Likud servant in the campaign of Likud. And this is a disgrace. Now about the coming election, we said that in the last election, we called for unity government. We called for unity government because this is exactly what the public wanted. And we put the blame on Likud and Kahol Lavan. But this time, we will make our choice because we cannot afford, and the state of Israel cannot afford another election.
This is the third election. The parties are clear. The positions are clear. Do you know now who Yisrael Beitenu will be recommending and working with to try and get the coalition?
We say two things. One, that first of all, we will recommend according to the mission statement of those who tend to be the prime minister. But we say something very clear. The end of Benjamin Netanyahu is over because he's running for the coming election just to get a bargain plea and nothing more. He's not going to be the next prime minister because he will not be able to go on the 17th of March to the court because this will take him out of the game totally.
So then, Mr. Ahmed Tibi, could the joint list work with a Benny Gantz-led, even if it's a minority government? Is that something that the joint list could get behind, even in light of the security situation in Gaza right now?
We will not be part of any coalition or any government, but the joint list which will increase its power next election, would like very much to have much more influence, to be part of the decision-making process for the sake of our community, the Arab citizens, and the sake of the whole society in the direction of more equality, more peace process, less incitement, less discrimination, less racism. Beside the fact that we want to grow up, we want to remove from the scene the most inciter against the Arab community, Prime Minister Netanyahu. In the WhatsApp, in the group, there is left and removed. He should be removed by the admin. The admin is the public, and we will do it next week.
Mrs. Moadi, I want to ask about the issues that are concerning for Arab Israeli citizens. Among them, and we've spoken on I-24 News to many Arab Israeli citizens, infrastructure, gun violence, and crime in these communities. Should Arab Israeli citizens, are they best represented perhaps by the Labor Merits Alliance rather than the joint list? What do you say?
First of all, let's make it clear. Being elected doesn't give you a privilege in face of the law. On the contrary, it brings you a new circles of responsibility. That was for Bibi Netanyahu's question after the election. As for the Arab society, of course, I believe the joint list do represent the Arab society. I wish we could talk to them and have dialogue with the Arab society and get more voices and more credibility, because we deserve it, because we see the Arab society and, of course, the representative of the Arab society as equal to us, and no question about it. And we're going to do everything we need to do to make them feel part of the society, of the Israeli society.
I want to ask, with the Yamina list, Jeremy Sultan, a question about security. Obviously, a very intense 3 days of rocket attacks, nearly 100 rockets in 72 hours, launched from Gaza into Israel. Tens of thousands of Israeli families running to the bomb shelters time and time again. Is Interim Defense Minister Naftali Bennett doing enough? Is he weak in the response to this siege of rockets?
No, Naftali Bennett is a very strong defense minister. And what we did see is what we should have seen, frankly, with previous defense ministers. And that is, if the residents of the Gaza periphery are not able to sleep at night, so the residents of Gaza should not be able to sleep at night. And that's what we saw in terms of a response. Now, as you know, there was
just being tortured by bulldozers.
You know, I did not interrupt you, MK Ahmed Tibi, but it's okay. I'm used to it. It's fine. What I can tell you is that a few days ago, when there was a decision to go ahead and take the body of the terrorist in order to go ahead and have it for collateral, for a future transfer of being able to collect in return our bodies of Shaul and Golden, the IDF soldiers that we lost, as well as release the Israeli civilians that are legally being held captive by Hamas. This is the type of things that was not done by previous defense ministers. There are many other examples in terms of going back to targeted killings, in terms of being able to see a lot of building within areas that previous defense ministers...
Mr. Sultan, that scene that we saw play out in broad daylight with this bulldozer mutilating a corpse in its effort to pick it up on its front loader and remove it back into Israel, is that something that will work? Will it bring back the bodies, do you believe, of the IDF soldiers?
I believe
will it stop future terror attacks?
I believe, first of all, even if those images might not be the best image to have on a television screen, I'd rather see that than put at risk the lives of our IDF soldiers. Now, is that something that's going to work? I think so. I think if we have bodies of Palestinian terrorists, we can release those in return to get back the bodies of our IDF soldiers.
Okay.
I don't think we should be releasing prisoners in order to go ahead and do that. We saw the aftermath of what the Shalit deal brought us, and that is unfortunately, more terrorist attacks by those who were released. So I think this is the new policy that we need to go through, and this is one that Naftali Bennett, as defense minister, enacted, something that was not done, not by Avigdor Lieberman, not by Bogi Ya'alon or previous defense ministers.
Mr. Tibi, your response, you jumped in there to what's happening and to the scene from the bulldozer.
You saw what all the world saw, very brutal, inhuman way of conduct with a corpus of a Palestinian who was shot. The way to bring
terrorist,
any soldier or any captured, live or dead, is by negotiation, not by torturing and humiliating corpses by bulldozer. It is brutal, brutal, brutal.
Mr. Away from our values.
Mr. Zohar, this was Netanyahu's pick to be the defense minister. Do you believe that he's doing a good job in stopping the attacks?
I think Naftali Bennett is doing a good job as the Minister of Defense, and we wish him, the best in his work, because it's very, very important for the security of all of our citizens. But the Prime Minister right now is very, very busy also in the security matters. As you know, he's the leader of this country, and he's always involved in these issues. And it's very, very important that he will be involved, because his experience, we know he have a great experience in the national security issues, and we trust him in these matters.
I want to turn.
I think it's important to add to everyone, just so we won't forget, that a few days ago, Benjamin Netanyahu said on stage the only reason he gave Bennett this position was to make him loyal to him and not move sides. A few years ago, when Bennett claimed this position for the first time, the Likud's official answer was, this is not a political job. Israel's security is more important than politics.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
Not only that,
I'm
Jeff,
grateful, Asaf.
He was running from responsibility because Netanyahu was the Minister of Defense. He never allowed any defense minister to act. By taking the heat in the last couple of months, he gave it to Bennett just to push the responsibility from him. This is Mr. Security, as one to be projected.
I'm grateful for both of my colleagues that remind me that we are living in a democracy country with political issues and sometimes political decisions. And
so as you know, is a political decision?
As you know,
you give up our security.
As you know, your members,
security minister is not a token to be given.
Your members in blue and white party that supposed to be the leaders in all of the security issues. We know about their deeds. When they were in business, we know how on the success when we were in business. So I'm trying to think what will happen if they will manage our country. And if they will manage our country, believe me, our country will be in a very bad situation.
Manage our country,
in a very bad situation.
Someone will be dealing with the country's issues and not their own issues, not court issues.
Yeah. I know that. This is the only way for blue and white to convince the people why not to vote to Bibi. Just
need a leader that will deal with
no Bibi. You don't have nothing to offer to the public. Just no Bibi. This is your only way to convince people.
Talk more about security in Gaza and the security issues that could arise with the U.S. peace plan in just a moment. But I want to be able to jump from security questions to civil questions, social and religious. And I want to ask a question to our guest on stage, Mr. Pindris, which is the heart of the matter, perhaps, that brought this country to election 1, followed by election 2. Now we're headed to election 3. And that is the question of IDF service for ultra-Orthodox yeshiva students, for religious students. As citizens of Israel, why shouldn't young religious men have the same national responsibilities as secular men? And what Avigdor Lieberman proposed, which was small quotas, enlistment quotas, gradually increasing, why wasn't that a reasonable bill?
First of all, what like my colleague just said before, what Lieberman opposes, Netanyahu shouldn't be prime minister. So he said it in all kinds of ways, using things like drafting yeshiva students. Yes, we do think since the Israeli country was established, the Jewish country was established, that one of the most important things, and we think it's the most important thing, is to keep the Jewish tradition, and that's why we think the yeshivot have to keep on going and not be with certain numbers and certain ways. And no, there was no real negotiation. There was no real talks with Lieberman about it because he was very obvious that he wanted Netanyahu out. Then he said he doesn't really mean Netanyahu, and we just heard from my favorite colleague, Eli Avigdor, that that's what they meant. They want Netanyahu out, and that's why, yes, we're on the third elections, and probably if it's going to keep on, and the polls are going to keep on just like they are today, we're on our way to our fourth election.
As a principle, the High Court has weighed in and questioned this blanket exemption rule as violating equality before the law. The idea of having this IDF bill where there would be small conscription numbers that have to be met by yeshiva students. Is that reasonable?
That exists today also. The numbers were probably wrong numbers under the administration of Mr. Lieberman, and he probably knew about it before I for sure knew about it. So we just heard that the numbers weren't the right numbers, and that's just what we asked when we were speaking then. When we had a theory that maybe he really means that, we said, okay, so let's have the numbers being decided by the government or by the any other committee or even by the army decided. And he said, no, I want it decided by law, which is something that doesn't exist. But just to remember that when we were talking about that issue, that's what they said. But we know today the issue in Israel is not about drafting and not about anything else. It's yes, Netanyahu or not Netanyahu, that's the issue. And yes, in Israel, until one of the sides is going to have 61 seats without Lieberman, we're going to go back and forth to elections.
So, Mr. Avidar, is that something that the Yisrael Beitenu party could compromise on? Could they put aside this IDF draft bill if it means getting a government together, if it means avoiding a fourth election?
I don't think so, because basically the draft law that was proposed by Mr. Lieberman was a thorough process that was taking a year and a half. It was actually accepted by certain fraction in the ultra-Orthodox parties. One of them is a colleague of mine, no names, let's forget about it. There was one fraction, which was the Hasidic movement inside Agudat Israel, that was opposing it. That's why they didn't accept it. We do believe in equality before the law. We do believe in equality in service. And there is no reason why a yeshiva bucher shouldn't provide 3 years of his time to even volunteer in Zaka, in a hospital, in a school, do something as other kids in his age.
You agree that Netanyahu should be prime minister?
No,
that will happen.
Netanyahu is not the issue, because Netanyahu is over. Netanyahu is over. Netanyahu is your chair.
I told you, don't count on it. He's not over. He's going to stay for many times. And you need to realize that.
We do respect, Jeff, we do respect the right of people in Bnei Brak to live their own way, but they shouldn't control and compose and impose their way of life on Tel Aviv.
This is why you wanted to jump in here. Here's a question for you directly.
Chris,
why Mea Shearim shouldn't impose their way of life of the people of Jerusalem?
I want to know why.
They like him.
I want to know why.
What?
Because he's a great leader. Because he's a great leader.
No,
he's a great leader.
No, he's not.
You don't think so, but we do.
No, but
we think otherwise.
Ask my friend.
It's okay.
Itzhak.
What was the question?
Why you want only Netanyahu?
Because
What's the difference between you and
he's
me, or
right
between you
now
and Benny Gantz?
because he's right now the leader of the people in Israel that are more traditional, feel more closer to religion.
Seriously?
Yes, we are. And we're proud of that. We're proud of that.
That's a fact.
We're proud of that.
It's a group of people that he's their leader right now. We didn't vote for him.
So according to your Jewish value, it's okay to become a prime minister when you are under...
We don't take
We hear about the indictments. The public don't care about it
trying
anymore.
to take
This is very sad, Mickey.
Because they know this is nonsense.
Against him. Or if he got from his friends cigars. I have issues that I care about more than how many
Like
cigars
what?
Netanyahu got.
Judaism.
Okay.
He says, I'll mediate. He
Thank you.
says that if it won't be Netanyahu, if it will be Miki Zohar will be the head of Likud, they will
Don't
prefer
count on
Miki
this
Zohar.
either. It won't happen.
I know it's true.
I prefer Miki Zohar as well.
He'd rather the Likud leader not be corrupt.
Thank you for the
But it's more important to him to build a coalition with parties that their base of voters are more close to Judaism than the other parties, because the only thing he cares about,
we are proud to be
the only thing he cares about is the Jewish religious aspect.
We're proud of our Jewish
not the
tradition.
democratic aspect of this country. He cares nothing about your right to live your life the way you believe.
You can.
He cares nothing about the right I have to live the life the way I believe.
Rights of the tradition.
If he has to prioritize,
question is today,
we just care about tradition. What is
traditional
the problem
people
with
of Israel. I'm not talking about our rights. Our rights, I want to tell you something, and you know that. Benny Gantz offered
the Jewish
the
tradition.
Haredi parties a better deal of money.
Everything.
And
So why don't you join us? Why don't you join us? I don't see why.
He's a party that doesn't represent the majority of your traditional Jews in Israel.
that's not the difference. To be honest.
Unfortunately.
The difference is we want to implement
I would like
changes.
to, I would like to make an exception in relation with Mr. Pinterest.
Religion and state in
I would
this
like to
country.
agree with my colleague, Mr. Pinterest, because I do believe that the voters of Kahol Lavan do not know the position of Kahol Lavan for state and religion, the separation. They
Yes, they
don't.
do.
Because
They do.
it's
We have a plaque,
Nazi,
and it's written in the internet,
running
and anyone can
towards
read it.
us,
And it
Benny
says
Gantz is an
kosher
excellent
reform,
connection
and
with
it
Degel
says
HaTorah,
civil marriage,
and they are
and
not
it says
revealing their
public transportation
position.
on Saturdays.
No
and
one.
it says
No
anyone
one.
can pray on the
No one.
Western
Everything
Wall.
we said already.
Not true.
To the connections that
We have an
Avigdor
agenda.
Lieberman
It's
had
published.
with the
I'm going to on
The past and it's over.
a separate but kind of related issue here, Mr. Tibby. Should Arab citizens, Israeli Arab citizens, also have
Between these Jews,
should Israeli Arab citizens also have mandatory national service? They're also citizens of Israel. Why shouldn't Israeli Arabs, do you believe they should, have a national service requirement as well?
Mr. Tibi shouldn't be blamed for it. I just want to say in the beginning, in 1950, Taufik Tubi actually
Almost
opposed
on a-
Ben Gurion for not allowing Arabs to join the IDF.
Mr. Tibby, do you think there should be?
ideologically, we cannot be part of an army with the war with our people. We want to put an end to occupation to promote peace, not war. But
Maybe not an army. Should there be mandatory national service, alternative to a military service?
I want to tell you that in the Arab community inside Israel, the value of promotion, this idea of assisting, helping, volunteering by camps, by volunteering in local municipality, in education system, in welfare systems is very intense all over the Arab cities, towns and villages. All over. The value is there. We do it by ourselves, but not by
So you're opposed to
defense
national-
or security corpus by the security ministry. It was imposed on. There was an attempt to impose it by the defense ministry.
All right, we have to leave it here on this segment. We're going out for a very short break. More topics, more issues, more conversation and debate with our guests on stage. After a very short break, stay with us. We'll be right back.